On the coldest New Year's Eve in decades, a struggling single mother named Emma and her young son opened their humble door to two strangers shivering in the snow. A man and his child, dressed in expensive clothes but helpless against the storm. She had nothing to give but warmth, soup, and shelter. She never asked their names. She never expected anything in return, but 3 days later, a knock on her door would reveal a truth so shocking it would change her life forever. This is the story of how one act of kindness in the darkest hour became a miracle that proved when you give from the heart, the universe gives back in ways you could never imagine. Emma Carter had learned long ago that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It was December 31st, the last day of the year, and the city was blanketed in the kind of cold that seeped through walls and settled deep in your bones. Outside her small apartment window, snow fell in thick, silent sheets covering the streets in white. Inside, the radiator coughed and hissed, doing its best to keep the chill at bay. Emma stood at the stove, stirring a pot of vegetable soup. It wasn't much: carrots, potatoes, a little broth, some seasoning, but it was warm, and it was enough. Her 7-year-old son, Daniel, sat at the kitchen table, his pencil scratching across a sheet of paper as he worked through his math homework. His brow was furrowed in concentration, his small hand gripping the pencil tightly. She watched him for a moment, her heart swelling with a familiar mixture of love and worry. Daniel was a good boy, quiet, thoughtful, always trying to help. He never complained, even when there wasn't much to go around. Even when other kids at school talked about their holidays, their gifts, their trips, Daniel just smiled and said he was happy at home with his mom. But Emma knew. She knew he deserved more. She knew he dreamed of things she couldn't afford: a new backpack, a trip to the science museum, maybe even a dog. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and waitressing during the day. Every penny went toward rent, food, Daniel's school supplies. There was never anything left over. Tonight, like so many nights before, she had chosen between paying the heating bill in full or buying groceries. She'd chosen groceries. The apartment was cold, but at least they had food. "Mom?" Daniel's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart. Can we watch the fireworks on TV tonight? At midnight?" Emma smiled softly. "Of course we can. We'll make hot chocolate and watch them together." Daniel's face lit up. "Can we make a wish?" "We can make all the wishes you want." He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his homework. Emma turned back to the stove, stirring the soup slowly. She didn't allow herself to think too much about the future. One day at a time. That was the rule. One day, one meal, one bill. Keep moving forward. The wind howled outside, rattling the window frame. Emma glanced out at the street below. It was nearly empty. Most people were inside preparing for parties, celebrations, countdowns. She could hear faint music from a neighbor's apartment, laughter echoing down the hall. She didn't feel envious. She felt grateful, grateful for this small space. Grateful for her son. Grateful that, despite everything, they were together. At 8 o'clock, she ladled soup into 2 bowls and set them on the table. Daniel closed his notebook and pulled his chair closer. "Smells good, Mom." "Thank you, baby." They ate in comfortable silence, the warmth of the soup spreading through them. Emma watched Daniel blow on his spoon, his cheeks flushed from the heat. She memorized the moment, the quiet, the warmth, the simplicity of it. After dinner, Daniel helped her wash the dishes. He stood on a step stool, drying each bowl carefully with a towel. Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. He was growing up so fast. Just as they finished, there was a sound from outside, a loud thud, followed by voices. Muffled. Urgent. Emma froze, her hand still in the soapy water. "Mom?" Daniel looked up at her, eyes wide. "It's okay. Stay here." She dried her hands quickly and walked to the front door, her heart beating a little faster. She pressed her ear against the wood and listened. More voices. A man's voice, strained. A child crying softly. Emma hesitated. She lived in a neighborhood where you didn't open your door to strangers after dark. But something in the sound, something desperate, pulled at her. She unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. On the landing outside her apartment, 2 figures huddled against the wall. A man and a young boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old. They were soaked through, shivering violently. The man's coat was expensive-looking wool, tailored, but it was covered in snow and mud. His face was pale, his lips tinged blue. The boy clung to him, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Please," the man said, his voice hoarse, "please, we need help." Emma's breath caught. Every instinct told her to close the door, to protect herself and Daniel. But when she looked at the boy, his small, trembling body, his frightened eyes, she saw her own son. She opened the door wider. "Come inside," she said quietly. The man and the boy stumbled inside, and Emma closed the door quickly behind them. Daniel stood in the hallway, watching with wide, curious eyes. "Daniel, get some towels from the bathroom," Emma said gently. He nodded and ran off. Emma guided the two strangers to the couch, her hands steady despite her racing heart. The man sank down heavily, pulling the boy close to him. Up close, she could see how drenched they were, their clothes clinging to their skin, water dripping onto her floor. Daniel returned with 2 towels, and Emma handed them to the man. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He wrapped one towel around the boy and used the other to dry his own face and hair. "What happened?" Emma asked quietly, kneeling in front of them. The man looked at her, and for a moment she saw something raw in his eyes: fear, shame, desperation. "Our car broke down," he said slowly. "A few miles from here. We tried to walk to find help, but the storm, we got lost. My phone died." His voice cracked. "I didn't know what else to do." Emma glanced at the boy. He was still crying softly, his small body shaking. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe now." You stood and went to the kitchen, returning with 2 mugs of the soup she'd made earlier. She handed them to the man and the boy. "Drink this, it'll warm you up." The man took the mugs with trembling hands. Thank you so much." The boy sipped the soup slowly, and gradually his crying stopped. Emma sat across from them, watching carefully. "Do you have family nearby?" she asked. "Someone I can call?" The man hesitated. "No, not here. We're from out of town." Emma nodded. She didn't push. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the way his shoulders sagged. Whatever had happened, they had been through something terrible. Daniel stood in the doorway, still watching. Emma motioned for him to come closer. "Daniel, this is—" She paused, realizing she didn't even know their names. "Michael," the man said quietly, "and this is my son, Christopher." "I'm Daniel," her son said shyly. Christopher looked up at him, his eyes still red but no longer crying. "Hi," he whispered. Daniel smiled. "Do you want to see my room? I have some books." Christopher glanced at his father, who nodded. "Go ahead, buddy." The 2 boys disappeared down the hallway, and Emma heard the door to Daniel's room close softly. She turned back to Michael. "You need dry clothes. I don't have much, but I have some sweats that might fit you. You've already done so much, it's no trouble." She went to her bedroom and returned with a pair of sweatpants and an old hoodie that had belonged to her ex-husband. She handed them to Michael. "You can change in the bathroom, down the hall, first door on the left." Michael stood slowly, his legs unsteady. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to." He disappeared into the bathroom, and Emma sat down on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. Her mind raced. Who were these people? Why were they out in a storm like this? And why did Michael seem so lost? But she pushed the questions away. It didn't matter. They needed help, and she had helped them. That was enough. When Michael returned, dressed in the dry clothes, he looked a little more human. The color had returned to his face, and his hands had stopped shaking. "Sit," Emma said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll make some tea." They sat together in the small living room, the sound of the boys' voices drifting from Daniel's room. Michael held the mug of tea in both hands, staring down at it. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, "for intruding like this," he trailed off. "You're not intruding," Emma said firmly. "You needed help. I'm glad I could give it." He looked at her then, really looked at her. And something in his expression shifted, surprise maybe, or disbelief. "You don't even know us," he said quietly. "And you let us in, fed us, gave us clothes. Why?" Emma thought for a moment. "Because if it were me and my son out there in the cold, I'd hope someone would do the same." Michael's eyes glistened. He looked away quickly, clearing his throat. "You're a good person," he said softly. Emma didn't know what to say to that. She wasn't sure she believed it herself. She was just doing what felt right. They sat in silence for a while, the warmth of the apartment settling around them like a blanket. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she had done something that mattered. The hours passed slowly, marked by the ticking of the small clock on Emma's wall. In Daniel's room, the two boys sat on the floor, surrounded by books and a few toy cars Daniel had collected over the years. Christopher was quiet at first, his eyes still shadowed with whatever he'd been through. But Daniel, with his easy kindness, talked to him about school, about his favorite subjects, about the stars and planets he loved to read about. Slowly, Christopher began to open up. He told Daniel about his own school, about the science project he'd been working on, about how much he loved building things. By the time Emma checked on them an hour later, they were both laughing, building a tower out of blocks. She smiled and closed the door gently. Back in the living room, Michael sat with his head in his hands. Emma could see the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, sitting down across from him. He looked up, his eyes tired. "I don't know how to explain what happened tonight. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I made some mistakes, big ones, and I put my son in danger because of them." Emma waited, giving him space to speak. "I'm not from here," Michael continued. "We were supposed to be at a hotel tonight, celebrating New Year's, but I got into an argument with someone important. I left in anger, took my son, and drove off without thinking. The roads were icy. The car spun out. We crashed into a ditch." He rubbed his face. "We weren't hurt, thank God, but the car wouldn't start. My phone was dead. We started walking, and then the storm got worse. We got turned around. His voice broke. I thought we were going to freeze out there." Emma felt a chill run through her. "You're safe now. That's what matters. But I should have been smarter. I should have protected him better. I'm his father. It's my job." "You did protect him," Emma said gently. "You got him to safety. You found help. That's what a father does." Michael looked at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You don't understand. I have everything, money, power, resources, and tonight, none of it mattered. I couldn't even keep my son warm." Emma leaned forward. "Money doesn't matter when you're lost in a storm. What matters is love. And I can see you love your son. That's enough." Michael was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Thank you for everything." They talked for a while longer about small things, safe things. Emma told him about Daniel, about how hard she worked to give him a good life. Michael listened, and she could see the respect growing in his eyes. Around 11 o'clock, Daniel and Christopher emerged from the bedroom, yawning but smiling. "Can we stay up until midnight?" Daniel asked hopefully. Emma glanced at Michael, who nodded. "All right, just this once." They gathered in the living room, and Emma made hot chocolate for everyone. She turned on the small television and found a channel broadcasting the countdown in Times Square. The boys sat on the floor, sipping their drinks, while Emma and Michael sat on the couch. As the minutes ticked down, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. Here, in her small apartment with two strangers who had become something like friends, she felt full. Not rich, not comfortable, but full. When the clock struck midnight, fireworks exploded on the screen, and the boys cheered. Daniel and Christopher high-fived, and Michael raised his mug in a quiet toast. "To new beginnings," he said softly. Emma clinked her mug against his. "To new beginnings." After the celebration, the boys were too tired to stay awake any longer. Emma made a bed for Michael and Christopher on the couch with extra blankets and pillows. It wasn't much, but it was warm and safe. "Thank you," Michael said one last time before lying down with his son curled up beside him. "Sleep well," Emma whispered. She went to her own room, where Daniel was already fast asleep in his bed. She climbed in beside him, pulling the covers up to his chin. As she closed her eyes, she thought about the strange, miraculous night she'd just lived through. She didn't know who Michael really was. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight she had done something good. She had opened her door to strangers and given them warmth when they had nothing, and that, she thought, was enough. Emma woke to the soft light of morning filtering through her bedroom window. For a moment she forgot about the night before. Then she heard voices, quiet, unfamiliar. And it all came rushing back. She got up quickly, pulling on a sweater, and went to the living room. Michael was already awake, sitting on the couch with his son still asleep beside him. He looked up when Emma entered, and she could see the exhaustion still etched into his face, but also something else: gratitude. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning. I hope we didn't wake you?" "Not at all." She glanced at Christopher, who was breathing deeply, his face peaceful. "How is he?" "He's okay. Tired, but okay." Michael stood slowly, careful not to disturb his son. "I can't thank you enough for what you did last night. You saved us." Emma shook her head. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Michael said firmly. "Not everyone. You didn't have to open your door. You didn't have to share your food, your home. But you did, and I won't forget it." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm just glad you're both safe." "I need to call someone," Michael said, "to come pick us up. Is there a phone I could use? I'll pay for the call." "Of course. There's a phone in the kitchen." Michael made his way to the kitchen, and Emma heard him speaking in low tones. She went to check on Daniel, who was still fast asleep in his room. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. When she returned to the living room, Christopher was awake, rubbing his eyes. He looked around, momentarily confused, then seemed to remember where he was. "Good morning," Emma said gently. "Good morning," Christopher whispered. "Are you hungry? I can make some breakfast." He nodded shyly. Emma went to the kitchen and pulled out what she had: eggs, bread, a little butter. It wasn't much, but it would be enough. She cooked quietly, listening to Michael's voice in the background as he finished his call. When he returned, he looked relieved. "Someone's coming to get us. They'll be here in about an hour." "Good," Emma said. "Breakfast will be ready in a few minutes." They ate together at the small kitchen table: Emma, Michael, Christopher, and Daniel, who had finally woken up and stumbled into the kitchen with sleepy eyes. It was a simple meal, but it felt special somehow, like a family. After breakfast, Michael helped Emma clean up. They worked side by side in silence, a comfortable rhythm forming between them. "Can I ask you something?" Michael said suddenly. "Of course. Why do you do it, work so hard, give so much when you have so little?" Emma paused, drying a plate. "Because that's what you do when you love someone. You give everything you have, even when it's not enough. You keep going because you have to." Michael looked at her with something like awe. "You're remarkable." Emma blushed. "I'm just a mom doing her best." "No," Michael said quietly. "You're more than that." Before Emma could respond, there was a knock at the door. Michael's expression shifted: relief, mixed with something else. "Sadness, maybe." "That's them," he said. Emma opened the door and two men in dark suits stood outside. They looked professional, serious. "Mr. Langston," one of them said. "We're here to take you home." Emma's breath caught. Langston. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Michael turned to Christopher. "Come on, buddy. Time to go." Christopher ran to Daniel and hugged him tightly. "Thank you for being my friend." Daniel hugged him back. "You're welcome. Maybe we can play again sometime." "I'd like that." Michael walked over to Emma. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, pressing it into her hand. "This is my number. Please, call me if you ever need anything. Anything at all." Emma looked down at the card. It was simple, elegant. Just a name and a phone number. "Thank you," she said, "but you don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," Michael said softly. "More than you know." He held her gaze for a moment longer, then turned and walked out the door with Christopher. The men in suits followed, and then they were gone. Emma stood in the doorway, watching as they disappeared down the stairs. Daniel came up beside her, slipping his hand into hers. "That was nice," he said quietly. "Yes," Emma agreed. "It was." She closed the door and looked down at the card in her hand. Michael Langston. She tucked it into her pocket and went back to her life: cleaning, cooking, preparing for her shift at the restaurant that evening. But something had changed. She couldn't quite name it, but she felt it, a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, good things could still happen. 3 days passed. Emma went back to her routine work, home, Daniel, sleep. The memory of that New Year's Eve felt almost dreamlike now, like something that had happened to someone else. She hadn't called the number on the card. What would she even say? Besides, she didn't need anything. She was managing. She always managed. On the evening of January 3rd, Emma was making dinner when there was a knock at the door. She wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer it, expecting maybe a neighbor or a delivery. But when she opened the door, she found a woman in a sharp business suit standing there, holding a leather portfolio. "Ms. Emma Carter?" the woman asked with a warm smile. "Yes, my name is Catherine Ross. I'm an attorney representing Mr. Michael Langston. May I come in?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Is something wrong? Is Michael okay?" "Everyone is fine," Catherine assured her quickly. "In fact, Mr. Langston asked me to come speak with you. It's very important." Emma hesitated, then stepped aside. "Please, come in." Catherine entered and 2 men followed her carrying large boxes. Emma's confusion deepened. "What is all this?" Catherine set her portfolio on the table and opened it, pulling out several documents. "Ms. Carter, do you know who Michael Langston is?" Emma shook her head. "I know his name, but Michael Langston is the CEO of Langston Industries, one of the largest technology companies in the country. He's worth several $1 billion. Emma felt the room tilt. Billion. Yes. And 3 nights ago, you saved his life and the life of his son. Emma sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. I didn't know. He knows that, and that's what makes what you did so extraordinary." Catherine smiled. "Mr. Langston wants to thank you. He's set up a trust fund for your son, Daniel. It will cover his education to college, including all expenses." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "What?" Catherine continued, pulling out more papers. "He's also arranged for the full payment of your rent for the next 10 years, and he's deposited a sum into a bank account in your name enough to ensure you never have to work 2 jobs again." Tears sprang to Emma's eyes. I can't accept this." "You can, and you will," Catherine said gently. "Mr. Langston was very clear. You gave him and his son everything you had when you had nothing. He wants to give you the freedom to live without fear." Emma couldn't speak. She looked at the documents spread out on the table, at the boxes the men had brought in, and she felt like she was dreaming. "There's one more thing," Catherine said. She pulled out a letter and handed it to Emma. "Mr. Langston wanted you to have this." With trembling hands, Emma opened the letter. "Dear Emma, I don't have the words to tell you what you did for me and my son that night. You opened your door to strangers. You fed us, clothed us, kept us warm. You asked for nothing in return. I've spent my life building companies, making deals, accumulating wealth. But that night, none of it mattered. I was powerless, and you, with almost nothing, gave us everything. You showed me what true generosity looks like. You reminded me that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in kindness, in compassion, in love. Please accept these gifts. They are not payment. You can't pay someone back for saving your life. They are simply my way of saying thank you, and of making sure that you and Daniel have the life you deserve. You are a hero, Emma, not because of what you gave us, but because of who you are." With deepest gratitude, Emma clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Daniel came running into the room, alarmed by her crying. "Mom, what's wrong?" She pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. "Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's going to be okay." Catherine gathered her papers quietly. "If you have any questions, my contact information is in the folder. Mr. 2, Langston wanted you to know that if you ever need anything at all, you just have to call." Emma nodded, unable to speak. After Catherine and the men left, Emma sat on the couch with Daniel, the letter still in her hands. "What happened, Mom?" Daniel asked softly. Emma looked at her son, her beautiful, kind, wonderful son, and smiled through her tears. "Someone we helped us back." 3 months later, Emma stood in the doorway of a new apartment, one with heat that worked, windows that didn't rattle, and a kitchen big enough for Daniel to do his homework at the table while she cooked. It still felt surreal sometimes. She'd wake up in the morning and forget for just a moment that everything had changed. Then she'd remember the letter, the trust fund, the gift that had transformed her life. She'd quit her night job. She still worked at the restaurant. She liked it, liked the people, liked staying busy, but now it was her choice, not her necessity. Daniel had new clothes, new books, a new backpack. They'd even talked about getting a dog. But the greatest gift wasn't the money. It was the freedom from fear, from worry, from the constant, exhausting calculation of which bill to pay and which to let slide. Emma had called Michael once, a few weeks after Catherine's visit. She'd thanked him, told him she didn't know how to repay him. "You already did," he'd said simply. "You taught me what really matters." They'd stayed in touch. Michael and Christopher had even come to visit once, and the boys had picked up their friendship like no time had passed at all. Now, as Emma stood in her new home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, she thought about that cold New Year's Eve, about the choice she'd made to open her door, about how one small act of kindness had rippled outward, changing lives, including her own. Daniel came up beside her, slipping his hand into hers. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think we'll ever see Christopher again?" Emma smiled. "I think so. I think we've got friends for life now." Daniel nodded, satisfied. Then he looked up at her with those bright, curious eyes. "Mom, why did you let them in that night? Weren't you scared?" Emma thought about it for a moment. "A little, but I was more scared of what would happen if I didn't. Sometimes doing the right thing is scary, but we do it anyway because it's right. And good things happen when you do the right thing." "Sometimes, not always, but even when good things don't come back to you, doing the right thing is its own reward." Daniel smiled. "I get it." Emma pulled him into a hug, feeling overwhelmingly grateful, not just for the money, not just for the security, but for this moment, for this boy, for this life. Emma's story reminds us that true wealth isn't found in bank accounts or possessions. It's found in the choices we make, the kindness we show, and the love we give even when it costs us everything. She didn't help Michael and Christopher because she expected anything in return. She helped them because it was the right thing to do. Because when she saw people in need, she saw herself and her son. Because her humanity was bigger than her fear. And in return, the universe gave back in ways she never imagined. But here's the real lesson. Even if Michael had never come back, even if there had been no trust fund, no gifts, no financial help, Emma's choice to help was still the right one. Because goodness doesn't need a reward. Kindness doesn't wait for payment. Love doesn't calculate the return. When we give from the heart, when we act with compassion, when we choose humanity over fear, we become richer than any bank account could ever make us. So today, I want to challenge you. Look for the moments when you can help. When you can open your door, share your warmth, give your time. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't calculate the cost. Just do it, because you never know whose life you might save. You never know whose story you might change. And you never know when that small act of kindness might come back to you in ways you never dreamed possible. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories of hope, humanity, and the power of kindness. Remember, the richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who gives the most. Thank you for watching, and may you always choose kindness.